Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Arkham, and I didn't expect to be monster hunting last weekend, but that's just sort of how it worked out. So let me tell you what happened. So I was sick last week, and then I felt better on the weekend, and so I drink a lot of hot chocolate, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to treat myself, and I'm going to go to Starbucks, because I'm feeling better, and I really like Starbucks hot chocolate, it's my favorite, and so I'm going to treat myself. And so I went out to Starbucks. This is like Saturday morning. And I said I would like a hot chocolate, please. And they're like, actually, we don't have any espresso. And if you know about Starbucks hot chocolate, you know that it has espresso in it. It's like, wait a minute, you have no espresso at all? And the girl behind the counter was like, actually, it all got stolen last night. That doesn't make any sense. I know, but 3 or 4 big bags of espresso beans just got stolen. Nothing else was stolen, just these espresso beans. That's really weird. Yeah, and it wasn't one of the other employees? We don't think so, because the drive-thru window clearly was broken into. And so I sort of looked at it from across the counter, and you could see these scratches on it, and you could see where it had been pried open. Like, that's really, really weird. And she's like, do you want to hear the weirdest thing? I'm like, yes. And she said, this isn't the first time it's happened. You've been robbed before? No, not us, but other Starbucks in the area. Every year or 2 years or so for the past 10 years, since Starbucks opened in town, espresso beans get stolen. Like once a year or once every 2 years. One of the Starbucks gets broken into, and all the espresso beans get stolen. Nothing else, just the espresso beans. It's super weird, and nobody knows why. Like, that is super weird. I want to know why. Do you mind if I look around? And she's like, I don't get paid enough. I don't care. Got you. And so I went outside, and I looked around in the parking lot, and I looked around by the drive-thru window, and from the outside you could really see these scratch marks, and you could really see where it had been pried open. And you could also see, I could also see this, it looked like pond scum. Honestly, it looked like pond scum that had dried in the sun. It had been wet last night when the assailant had come in and broken in, and now it was dry, so it was just sort of like green and brown flaky stuff. But I'm a marine scientist. I know what pond scum looks like. I taught a class all about algae. I know what pond scum looks like. And so this clearly looks like whoever broke in came from a swampy area. That's where they were before. And so looking around a little bit more, I could see actually some espresso beans that had fallen out of the bag or something. Like, I saw some and they were crushed, and they were by these tire tracks in sort of a sandy bed on the side of the parking lot where whoever was taking them drove away, and so I could see these tire tracks. Like, that's really interesting. I wonder if these tire tracks would match another car, because see, I watch a lot of detective shows, detective movies, and I read a lot of mystery novels. So, you know, my brain was getting active. My adventurous, reader side of me was like, I wonder if I can figure this out. So what I did was I went home, and luckily I had some Starbucks cocoa packets that you could buy, and so I could make myself some cocoa at home, some hot chocolate at home, which was good enough for what I needed, and that was just something lovely and hot to drink while I researched the history of Starbucks in town and espresso thefts. And what I found was really interesting. So I do a lot of analyzing data, and so I think about the world in terms of data. And so I was looking at this in terms of data, and I was like, all right, so in the past 10 years, here's where all the Starbuckses are, and here's which ones were hit when the espresso was stolen. Now, this wasn't easy to find. I had to do a lot of digging because it's a really weird crime, and it happens so infrequently. You think, oh, once every year, that's kind of a lot. Except it wasn't once every year. It was more like once every 18 months. And it only started in the last 10 years when Starbucks came to town. When Starbucks came to town, whoever started stealing espresso beans also came to town. So I had a short time series, small sample size, so you can't get a lot from that, but what I could put together was that the pattern of Starbucks that were hit over the time series started in one place and then spread out from what appears to be an epicenter, a starting point, which, logically thinking, that is probably where whoever was doing the stealing, they were based. They must have been based close to those first few Starbucks that they hit, because they started spreading out after that. So they probably started with the ones closest to them. I thought that's interesting. So I put on my fieldwork clothes and got in my car and headed out there. I'm looking for the first Starbucks that was hit and swampy area nearby because of that swamp pond scum that I saw at the crime scene. Right? So now I'm looking in sort of residential areas because I think probably the person who took this, or the people who took this, they live around here. That was my hypothesis, and so I was, driving around, walking around, and it took forever, but I found a house with a car in front and espresso beans in the driveway, like broken. Just a few. But the car, it was like a dirt driveway. The car tire tracks were the same as the ones that I saw at Starbucks. So I was like, all pumped. I found it. And so I was like, I really want to know what kind of people steal espresso beans every 18 months for no reason. They must have a reason. And I shouldn't have been doing this, and this was a poor decision, but I went up to the door, and I was going to knock on the door and see if anyone was home and see if I could ask them. The door was open when I got up there, and I knocked anyway, but nobody answered, and the door sort of opened, so I just sort of went in. Also, probably shouldn't have done that. But I did, and there were more espresso beans on the floor, especially in the kitchen, and I actually found the bags of that the espresso beans had been in. I found those, and there was drips of coffee stains on the floor and on the counter. So they had made espresso with all of the espresso beans. That's so much espresso. So much. And it was gone. They were gone, and the espresso was gone. What's going on? And so I sort of followed the trail. It's like if they'd been carrying a pot or something, it had dripped while they were walking, and I followed it to the back porch, right? And it went off the back porch, and in the backyard, I could see at the edge of the backyard, I could see these paths. It was one big path and, a couple little paths that sort of went to it. But it went into the woods, which is where the swamp was. Like, they're definitely out there. I should not have gone down that path. I shouldn't. That is a foolish, foolish idea. Especially alone, and especially as it was the end of the day, and it was starting to get dark. The sun hadn't set yet, but it was starting to go behind the trees, and so in the woods it was going to be dark. Didn't occur to me at all. I went right on. My scientific curiosity carried me forward. And so I went down this path. And I was following some tracks, because it was swampy, so it got a little bit muddy on the path, and I could see tracks. I could see boots and sneakers, and so whoever had come from the house had gone this way. And the farther I went, the more tracks started to come from the sides, and there were more shoes, but there were also bare feet. So there were more people, and some of them had shoes on, some of them had bare feet, and I was going farther, and then I started to hear something in the distance. I could hear people. I knew it was still far away, but I knew it was some kind of, there was conversation, there was laughter, there was music, but it was still far away. So I kept following this path, going closer and closer to the music. And I'm noticing that the tracks that I'm following, there are still sneakers, there are still boots, there are still bare feet, but there are also alligator feet. They're not all human feet anymore. And so that was strange. And so I was like, that's kind of a lot of alligator tracks mixed in with these human tracks, and they all look about the same time. They were all made about the same time. Like this was a group of people and alligators that were all walking together in this direction. So that was strange. But then I got to this clearing, and I looked out, and I saw about 50 people, and I saw about 50 alligators, and I saw about 50 people who were also alligators. It was the strangest thing I'd ever seen. It is the strangest thing I've ever seen. And it is scientifically fascinating. I was staring at this with scientific fascination, and I didn't know what to do. I wanted to know everything, but also these were strangers, and alligators are dangerous. But I wanted to know everything. So, you know, while I was sort of frozen, trying to figure out what to do, trying to understand what it was I was seeing, somebody saw me, right? Somebody noticed I was there. And a couple people that came over, they're like, "Who are you?" And I didn't get the impression that they were aggressive, which was really interesting. It's like they were more afraid of me than they were angry at me. They didn't seem angry at all. It was quite interesting. It was like, "Who are you?" And so I told them, and "What are you doing here?" And like, "Well, I was looking for the espresso beans from Starbucks." And they're like, "Wait, you're not a hunter?" "A hunter? No." "Like an alligator hunter?" No. "I'm not here to kill alligators. No, I'm just looking for the espresso beans." And they gave this kind of sheepish look, which looks really strange on an alligator, by the way. But they were like, yeah, that was us. We took them. You're not going to turn us into the cops or anything." No, I'm an ecologist. I study nature. I love nature. I like learning about the world around me and the natural world. And this, whatever is going on here, is so interesting. I don't care if the police find out or if I never publish this. I just want to know. They're like, "Oh, you're an ecologist. Oh, so you can appreciate that this is cool, right? And this is interesting and unusual science and nature and stuff." And it started to get a little fuzzy around then because they got excited that I was excited, and they're like, "Come on, let me show you, let me show you." And so they brought me over into the group. They were like, "This is Dr. Arkham. She's an ecologist, and she was clever enough to, you know, find us, and she studies things like fish mostly, but the natural world in general is just something that I really, really appreciate." And they really appreciated that I really appreciated that. And so they're like, "Okay, here's the deal." And they showed me, and I could see all of the pots and pans and pitchers and everything that they'd used to carry the espresso from the house to the clearing. But they had poured it all into this big, huge bathtub that they had on the side of the clearing. This huge thing. There was so much espresso in there. I can't even explain how much was there. It was so much. And they were drinking it like punch, like Christmas punch, you know? They had a little ladle, they put it in cups. They were all drinking it. Like, there were adults, there were, you know, people that were older than my grandparents, and then there were kids. It was this huge sort of family reunion kind of thing. And they were all drinking this espresso. I'm like, is this good for them? And they're like, "Here, try some." It was very, very stupid of me, but I did. I tried some. And I don't remember much after that, because espresso was not the only thing that was in that bathtub. There was definitely some other psychedelics of some sort. I remember a lot of laughter and music and lights. But the gist of what I learned is that the were alligators, because that's what they were a family of were alligators, and every 18 months or so, the community, the family, is overcome with basically like a bloodlust for killing. They want to kill, and the only way to keep themselves from giving into that temporary bloodlust, giving into that urge to murder people, is this potion, this concoction, which is mostly espresso. And if they can, basically they dance the bloodlust away, they party the bloodlust away, they get super, super caffeinated and a little bit high, and they just vent all of that energy that otherwise would be devoted to killing people into doing something fun and safe. And it's this huge party, and they do it every time this bloodlust happens. But what I learned was that it's not predictable exactly. It's like sort of predictable, you know, it's going to happen about every 18 months, but we don't know exactly what's going to happen, and then when it does, it's immediate, and the very short window of time to deal with it and to make the concoction and plan the party. And you know, they don't have to plan the party, they just all have to show up, but they have a very short window of time. So that's why they have been stealing the espresso from Starbucks, is because they need it right now, and that is the best source of espresso, quality espresso, that they can easily access. Now that didn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm like, you know, Amazon Prime exists, right? And also, why don't you just stock up on espresso as opposed to stealing it? And they're like, oh yeah, that's actually a good idea. And I mean, this really hadn't occurred to them. They needed a scientist to come and tell them, you know, you've been doing this on and off for 10 years. It didn't occur to you to maybe store espresso so that you have it, so that you don't have to break into Starbucks every time this happens? That would save you a lot of time, and you wouldn't be stealing. And they seem to seriously consider it. So, you know, I hope perhaps that I have affected change, and that they won't be burglarizing Starbucks anymore. But, you know, they're were alligators, and they've been around a heck of a lot longer than most of the other people in town. So maybe they're just going to keep doing what they've always been doing. You know, I just commend them for finding a solution to bloodlust and murder, you know? That's pretty enlightened of them. And so, anyway, I woke up the next morning and I was in the clearing and I was completely alone and a little bit cold. I had a little bit of a headache. I was very thirsty. I needed water really bad. But I was completely safe. I don't know what happened exactly. I was sleeping and I woke up in the clearing. But I only remember good things about that party. I don't think I ever want to go to that again, unless I'm specifically invited. But scientifically, I feel really good about knowing about it. Like, I just think that's so fascinating. It'd make a really good story, wouldn't it? Anyway, we'll see what they do next time. If Starbucks gets burglarized again, hopefully it's not on a day that I'm trying to get hot chocolate. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that story. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, goodbye.